And okay, so we want to go and get started. Now, one of the things I always wanted to share with people is one of the reasons that you want to become an author is because the word author is actually derived from the word authority. So when you become an author of a book, and that makes you, and assuming the content is good, that makes you now the authority on that subject. So as an example, I know Katie probably remembers I used to do a lot of lease option real estate when I was in Vegas. And in 2015, I wrote my first book. This is it right here. It was self-published. Lease Options Made Easy. As you can see, it's a fairly thin read. And actually, this is the very, very, very first book that was ever printed. Is this one that I'm holding in my hand? Now, if there was another guy that did lease options as well, and without knowing much anything else, you got me as the author and this other guy that's not the author. Who do you going to trust more? You're going to trust the author or you're going to trust the non-author? And if this is something that's solving a problem that you have. How many, by a show of hands, how many would say that, or put a one in the box if you would choose the author, or a two in the box that you would choose somebody else or the other person? Katie says you would trust the author. And David, D, and Thomas, on any subject, whatever subject that you are the expert on. If you had a twin brother that did the exact same thing, most people would choose the author over the non-author. Okay, well, D is actually says she would not choose the author. Okay. Well, that's kind of the reason of this call today, is because we want to make sure that everybody, that if you're a subject matter expert, you need to write a book. Now, just to give you a little bit of a history about me, I've actually written 4 books. I'll show them to you because I want to make sure that you are aware that these are legit books. This is my Lease Options Made Easy was my first one. Then in 2016, I hired a book writing coach, paid a few $1,000s for it, and that's when I came up with my second book, which is called Designing Your Own Destiny. 2 years later, I wrote up my third book. It's called The Winner's Code: Secrets of the Winner's Mindset. And then in 2021, I wrote my thickest book. This is a tome, almost like a tome. It's called Launch: The A to Z's in Creating a Successful Business. My business model now is based upon this book. So the reason that you want to write that book is that you can become that authority on that topic. So I'd like to hear from you either in the chat or unmute yourself. Why are you considering becoming an author? Katie, I'll go with you first, Katie.
Okay. To be an expert, I guess. So I'm passionate about mental health. I want to be a speaker in the space, and a book really helps if you want to be a speaker and to be known as an expert.
You're 100% correct. If you're thinking of going the public speaking route, then yes, you definitely want to have a book. And I'm going to be talking about a book that I'm going to highly recommend that you guys read here in a few minutes. But yeah, if you're going to be a speaker, being an author as well is hugely credible. We'll go with Thomas since he's got his camera on. That's next.
I'll say essentially to obtain authority over my own life. I kind of want to make a business out of it as well. So basing it on one
So
business perspective, personal
and
growth.
so what subject matter would that be in? Like Katie's was mental health. Have you given that much thought?
It's sort of going into the same direction, more into addiction, a little bit more into the recovery and substance consumption, I'll say.
Okay. And then we'll go with David.
I think I just have a story I'd like to tell.
So would you be thinking more of a nonfiction book or a fiction book?
Fiction.
Fiction? Okay. This class is a little bit more for nonfiction, but we will talk about some fiction principles as well, in case you want to go that route. And we have D as the last person.
Hi, and sorry if I missed you. My screen keeps going in and out a little, but I'm
Okay.
thinking more I'm thinking more nonfiction. Kind of like David, I think I have a story. I was thinking of an
Well,
emotional kind of,
nonfiction is based upon truth and reality. Fiction is telling stories.
so mine kind of ministry, devotional, like self-help.
Okay. Okay. Well, and that's actually one of the things I was wanting to actually show you. Is that when you're getting started, I have basically a 20-step process that we're going to be going through today. And the step number 0 is the one that we're going to start with. So I'm going to go and share my screen and start taking notes for you guys, or partially taking notes. Okay, so I'm going to go and pull up a Word file. And it says, when you become a self-published author, the very first thing that you want to do, and I call this step 0, because this is before you even get started, is understanding the difference between non-fiction and fiction. Okay, so when we're talking about a nonfiction, essentially, if I were to go to Wikipedia, Wikipedia has the definition of nonfiction as is any document or media content that attempts in good faith to convey information only about the real world rather than being grounded in imagination. Nonfiction typically aims to present topics objectively based on a historical, scientific, and empirical level. So that is the definition of nonfiction. If you're going to write fiction, it says fiction is any creative work, chiefly with a narrative work portraying individuals, events, or places that are imaginary or in a ways that are imaginary. So that is the difference between nonfiction and fiction. So whenever you're going to start writing your book, you need to start from the get-go. Am I going to be writing a story, or am I going to be writing a factual event? Or, like example, my third book, The Winner's Code, is about mindset. So that's definitely nonfiction. This is about personal and business development, which is also nonfiction. This would be, building a business, again, nonfiction. And then this one here is kind of like a hybrid. When I wrote my first book, it's called Lease Options Made Easy. I wrote it based upon the FAQs of my website. So then I want to talk about lease options. I want to train people how to do lease option real estate. Only thing is, after I wrote the book, the first draft of the book, I realized it was probably by far the most boring thing I ever read. So what I ended up doing, like, instead of writing this, talking about that kind of real estate, I said, why don't I just create 2 characters, and they can have different perspectives on lease option real estate. It was a husband and wife team. So even though this is nonfiction, it was actually had fictional characters in it. So I would assume it's kind of like a hybrid. So if for example, if Thomas is wanting to write something about addiction and write a fictional piece about it, he can have a lot of nonfiction stuff in there, or write the nonfiction part and then have characters portray other parts, just as an idea. Does that make sense? Okay. So one of the things I would like to share with you, I did some research right before this call, and there are here are the top 11 genres when considering writing a nonfiction book. Number 1 is going to be a biography or autobiography. The second one would be something on history. So if you want to write something that's a historical event that occurred. A third one would be on science. Now, it sounds like a couple of you guys will probably fall in the category number 4, which is going to be in the area of self-help, motivation, or personal development. Okay, so that's if you go to any still standing bookstore, you will still see that's a large section in any bookstore. Actually, I would say that both of these books will be in self-help arenas. Now, the next one will be in business or finance. The sixth one would be in true crime. True crime is, especially after the invention of podcasts, have become very, very popular in the books as well as in the podcast arenas. The seventh one would be on a memoir. So if you're writing about your history, or I believe D was kind of, it could fall into that kind of a category for her book. The eighth would be on psychology. The ninth would be on health and wellness. The next one after that, the 10th would be on travel. And then the 11th would be on investments and real estate. So, so just to read, to talk about my 4 books, that my lease options made easy is on real estate as well as investing. My Designing Your Own Destiny is on self-help, business development, and it's partially autobiographical. My 3rd book is on mindset and self-help, and my 4th book is on business development. So those are the main categories. Now, you may be writing a book on religion or something that's a different category, and that's perfectly okay. I'm just going to try to give you some ideas of areas that you may want to start focusing on your book. So here's my next question I want to ask. So starting with Katie, then Thomas, and then David and D, what genre would you think that you would pick from that list, or if you wanted to create something that's not on that list? Would you
It was a self-help book.
self-help? Okay, Thomas.
Mine is a little bit more based on psychology, I'll say.
Okay, and then David.
Fiction.
We didn't hear you, David.
Sorry, fiction.
Okay,
Is that
fiction. Okay. No, that's a different category, but yes. And by the way, just so that you guys know, sometimes when you're talking on Zoom, when you turn on your microphone, it may take 1 or 2 seconds before the microphone actually goes live. So that's why we didn't hear David the first time. And then with D.
I would say self-help or maybe self-improvement for mine too.
Okay. And then why are you wanting to become an author or a published author within the next 6 months? And again, go through that same order.
Oh, well, I've been writing my book for 5 years and I need to crap or get off the pot, and as the saying goes. So I really need to get it published in the next 6 months. And I know you're going to keep going here, but I'm, interested in the ways of publishing, to make that happen, because a traditional publisher is a longer route. And I know you're going to get into all that, but that's my motivation currently.
Yes, going the fully published route could take a lot of time, and that's assuming they even want to work with you. Then Thomas, your why.
Sort of similar. I've been working on my book for about 2 years now. I want to make sure I publish it and have some sort of feedback from the community in order for me to implement whatever I'm writing about, see how it can apply into post-secondary education.
Okay. Well, some of the things I'm going to be sharing with you during this content, I think you will definitely benefit from, but it's going to be it's still probably about 30, 45 minutes down the road before we get there. And David, why do you want to write a book?
I don't know, the same answer I said in the beginning, I guess. Just have a story I want to tell.
Okay. And then D.
Yep, I concur with the group. Kind of like what Katie said, it's been a while. I pick it up, put it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share my screen again, and I did put down this step 1, which is why you want to write a book. There is a book out there, and I read back in 2016, and that book is called. Oops, wrong one. That book is called Book the Business. How to make big money with your book without even selling a single copy. Now that book was I was in the process of writing my second book at the time when I bought that book, and I had already hired my book writing coach. But this book basically says 2 things. When you write a book, do you want to, number 1, make money for the sales of the book, or number 2, make money off the book itself? So let me go and have you just put that in the chat. Number 1, you want to make money from the sales of the book, or 2, from what the book does for you. Okay, very good. Fantastic. Most people, when they write a book, they're trying to they're wanting to actually make money from the sales of the book. There's when after you read this book here, or when you read this book and you fully understand, if you're writing your book to make sales from the book, most likely it's not going to sell that many copies. If you're writing the book to be as a something where they show you that you are the credible person, where you the authority, then you definitely want to write that book. Now, I do believe there is a third reason why people write books. It's not covered in this in that book there. And I think the third reason that people write a book is for therapeutic reasons. Because they just want to get it, they just want to get it out there. Maybe somebody else will read it and learn from, from what they went through. So that, to me, that is the third reason. However, if you're looking to make money from what the book can offer, then I'd say then that is a very strong reason why. And Katie said something earlier today is that one of the reasons that she wants to write a book is because she also wants to become a public speaker, a paid public speaker. And do you see how Katie, if she had an event that people showed up at the event, and and then said the event costs $195 or whatever it is that she's charging, and she's giving everybody that attends a free copy of the book, do you see that as being something that she could easily do from stage? Do you think if Katie sent her book and say chapter 5 was on a particular subject, and she sent her a free copy of that book to a an MC or an event host or something like that, and she could actually say, "I want to talk on your stage. This is what I talk about in my fifth book or in chapter 5." Would that add to her credibility? What do you think, Katie?
Yeah, I think so. As long as they liked it, as long as it was written well, I think that it would add to my credibility.
I'm going to assume that you have good content, and when we get later on, there's going to be reasons why you should have a very good content. But yes, that book that you have is also your business card. Okay, so when I wrote this book here, and I was speaking at different real estate and investor club association meetings about lease option real estate, and I was able to sell this book and say instead of $14.95 online, I'm selling it for $10. I mean, does it give me something else I could sell while at a speaking event, right now where I'm the quote unquote expert? So these are some of the reasons why you want to have this book. So when you have that in your mind, that could help you with your motivation as you're writing that book. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me see. Yeah, and also this is for Katie and anybody else that might want to become a public speaker. When I wrote this book, I wrote this in January 2015, or that's when it was released. At that time, I was putting together some of my signature talks, my 60-minute and 90-minute signature talks. Can those talks come from your book? If Thomas wants to speak with people, in his area, could he create a talk around, say, chapter 4 and chapter 5? Does he already have the material written? All he has to do is tweak it to be able to speak a part. So the thing is, when you're writing your book, keep all of that kind of stuff in mind. I mean, those could be additional chapters in your book, or this could be whenever you've written your book. This is how you start creating your signature talks. Do you guys realize that I said earlier that I created an entire business around this book as a business coach, a business consultant, because I use the principles in this book. I've got several talks that have come from this book. So always keep that in mind. And hopefully that will get you motivated. Now, those of you that are the fiction writers, now the thing is, with those whichever space that fiction is on, how can you monetize that as well? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next talking point, and that's going to be step 2. Pick a niche. So one of the things you may want to do is you want to go online and do some Google searches or Bing searches on. Oops, somebody's coming in. Let me go let him in. You want to go out and do some searches and search other people who have written similar books in your genre. Either pick them out in the library, listen to the audiobook, buy the book yourself personally, and just research other people's material. Also, make sure that you fact check everything, especially if you're writing nonfiction. I'm sorry? Well, welcome, Stephanie.
Oh, sorry, that was muted. I apologize for that.
No, no worries, no worries. Everybody's welcome. And also, when you're looking at your niche or your genre, start finding what key words that you could be used. Not only ones that you could be known for, but the ones that your topics are on, and go and do that research. Then the next thing you want to do, and again, you have not written a single word yet. So for those of you that are still kind of on the fence on writing the book, these are the techniques that my coach gave to me. So I want to share all of them with you. So let's go to the next step. After you, once you pick your niche, then you want to go in there and pick your topics. What is it that you're going to be writing about? So just start writing these topics down. Now, one of the things when I wrote my second book, one of the things he said is it says write down 100 topics or 100 or more topics that you want to possibly be in your book, and that's what you're going to do is write down the topics. I will show you mine. These are what I call my aha moments. As you can see, I had how many? Over 100 different topics. It was 3 pages long. So these are just ideas of things that I wanted to have in my book, and just write those down. After you do that, make sure that if you're, if the topics that are going to be like stories or events that happen to you, make sure that whenever you're starting to pick which ones you're going to use, that 49% or less are going to be about you, and 51% or more is going to be about somebody else. The reason being, if 51% or more is about you, now you got an autobiography. You're not trying to write an autobiography, most likely. So make the book about the learning experiences that you learn from somebody else. With what Thomas said about addiction and mental health, some of the stuff may have happened to him. Some of the stuff may happen to somebody else that he knows. So it doesn't always have to be a personal recollection or rendition of what you experienced. Then what you want to do after you pick your topics, and then just write them all down. Then we're going to go into the next step. Now that's going to be step 4. Decide the number of chapters you want in your book. Let's call this X. Okay, so you want to have an X number of chapters for your book. And then what you want to do is go ahead and get a notepad or some typing paper or copy paper and get X plus 1 number of pages. When I wrote my second book, I had 22 chapters. I knew before I even started writing the book, I knew it was going to be 22 chapters long. And I started putting that with here the title of those chapters or the working title of those chapters, and then that was at the very top of the page. Page 1, the plus 1 is going to be the cover of your book. So maybe you start writing what is the name of the book, with your name at the bottom. So how's it going to appear? So here's designing. This is my first draft of writing everything when I created my book, Designing Your Own Destiny. So I finally went with this title here, but I was going to go say owning your own reality. I was going to embracing change through leadership and love. That's the subtitle. It's upside down. That is a subtitle. But these are different topics that I was going to write about. I even came up. It's like, hey, I was going to write possibly under a pseudonym. I was going to write under the name William Montclair. And the reason, or excuse me, Wilmington Montclair, I'm sorry. And the reason I picked that name is back in 2009, One, I wrote a screenplay, a short film when I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where the name Wilmington came from. My name was under the catering. My name was under the locations. My director. Basically, my name appears so many times in the credits that I say I have to come up with a fake name or a pseudonym to at least just take my personal name off some of the places, some of the names in there. This came from me living in Wilmington, North Carolina at that time, renting at Montclair Apartments. That's where the name came from. So some of you may want to write under a different name. I mean, you can do it yourself or not. One of the other things I would suggest is whenever you pick a name to use that name every single time. I use my middle initial on all of my books. Or if you, what's the name of the lady that did the Harry Potter series? What, excuse me, what is her author name?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Riley?
Mhm.
Why do you think she went with J.K.?
From my understanding, it was because she didn't want people to think that she was a woman. And so the JK kept her name neutral and helped her sell more books initially. Or the publisher, the first publisher, something like that.
That's what I've heard as well. The reason she went under JK because people didn't think a female could write that kind of stories. So she did want to keep it anonymous. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, let's say if Thomas, as an example, he's writing fiction and nonfiction, he may use two different names. This is my nonfiction name. This is my fiction name. I mean, what was his name? Stephen King. What was his other name? Peter or something? Well, he wrote under two different names. And then one time I remember reading one book back in the 80s where he co-authored both one book with himself. So I mean, just something just something to think about. Now, what you're going to do now is you're going to get this is still part of step 4. You're going to get those 100 events that occurred and start writing them down on the chapters that you're going to initially put them on. So right now, what you're doing is you haven't even started writing a word yet, but you're now starting to outline your book. This is going to make it a lot easier. Now, for you fiction writers, I don't know if you guys decided to write the book and let it be created and come along, or if it's something that you're going to have like these are the events that are going to happen, and then you're going to write stories to get there. Does that make sense? Now, who was the author for Sir Conan Doyle? Do y'all know who he is?
No.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Does anybody know who he is? He's a very famous author. He wrote the series of Sherlock Holmes. He was the author for Sherlock Holmes. And do you because I read about this a few years ago, do you when he was writing Sherlock Holmes, how do you think he wrote that book or stories? Yeah, anybody that wants to unmute themselves and share. Well, with no volunteers, to my understanding, how he did it, he wrote the book backwards. He started with the solutions in mind, and then he created the event to provide that very unique solution. It wasn't linear going from the beginning to the end. He started with the end and then worked backwards. So these are just some ideas for the fiction writers. So, and then let's go ahead and go to step 5. So at this point in time, you've got your ideas down. You've got all the things that you're going to be writing about are your topics. They've now been distributed throughout the chapters. So step 5 is going to be set a writing schedule. Okay, so when you're setting a writing schedule, it's going to take time to write your book. When I wrote this book, it took me a year to write it, and I was writing pretty adamantly. So what you want to do is you want to set a time aside every X number of hours per week, X number of hours per day, days of the week. Set a writing schedule and stick to that writing schedule. Now, whenever this is something that most people are completely unaware when they're writing a book, but whenever you are decided to do this, go ahead and write the book using your outline, but do not make any single corrections. Do not, once you're done with chapter 1, meaning you wrote the first draft of chapter 1, you're going to chapter 2. You're not adding anything back to chapter 1. This is the reason why most people don't write a book or don't finish a book, is they start it and they're looking for perfection the first time around. The first draft is not meant to be perfection. What my coach basically said, and sorry if I offend anybody, but my coach basically said is, whenever you're writing your first draft, it's going to be the biggest piece of crap out there. It is going to be complete garbage, utter crap. So, but the thing is, you want to write, you want to set your writing schedule, just get that book out there. Now, you do want to have a target in mind. You want to, whenever you're writing a book, the typical page that's full of words has 300 words on it. Okay. So one of the things you would definitely want to think about is, how many pages do you want in a book? When I say 100 words on it, I mean on a 6x9 piece of paper. Now, which is what your standard books are. So keep that in mind. Now, fiction books are going to be, depending on what kind of fiction you're writing. Those are going to be much smaller. Those are going to be like, was it 3x5 or 4x6 or something like that? Because they're a lot smaller books. So you want to keep this in mind, because one thing that I learned is that whenever I wrote, well, I'll get to that in a moment. So whenever you're writing this, you also want to follow what I call a SMART-T goal. Now, who in here knows what a SMART goal is? Put a yes in the box in the chat if you do. Put no if you do not know what a SMART goal is. Katie does. Okay, well, so Katie, what is a SMART goal?
It's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and on a timeline.
Okay, so whenever you're writing a book, you do want to follow the SMART goal formula. However, in my second, third, and fourth book, I talked about what I call a SMART-T goal, which is SMARRTY. Now, as Katie had already said, the word SMART is part of that. Is part of that. So whenever you are setting your book writing schedule and your book publishing schedule, make sure it follows the SMART-T formula. That means you have to have a specific timeline. So I want to have my book done by June 30th, 2024. That's specific. It has to be measurable, which means that you have to be able to judge how far along you're on that path. And this is with any kind of goal setting. Attainable. It has A stands for attainable. So it has to be something that you can actually achieve. If, let's say, for an example, if Stephanie, because I haven't really picked on her yet, if Stephanie has a desire to write a book in the next 6 months and she has not started yet, could she be published by tomorrow and have something of good content? That is not attainable. So you want to make sure you give yourself time to do that. What did you say R was? Irrelevant? Or realistic?
Realistic.
Okay, so the first R stands for either realistic or relevant. It has to be in alignment to who you are. The second R stands for what risk are you taking? You're not going to achieve any goal if you're not doing something different, and doing something different requires risk. And and then T stands for it has to have a time frame. You have to have a deadline. A goal without a deadline is just a dream. So you definitely want to have that deadline there. And the last letter, the letter Y, who wants to venture a guess as to what the letter Y stands for? And to me, it's by far the most important one. Anybody want to venture? Anybody want to venture a guess? The why actually stands for, what is your why? Why are you doing it? So a goal without a why, again, it's just a dream. So definitely have that strong why there. Any questions so far? And as I already mentioned on step number 5, the thing is, you want to write this book. You want to write the first draft without going back correcting anything. Please do that. And just to show you again my stuff is that this is when I did my first draft. There was that. Here's oops. And here are the different chapters. Each page represents one chapter. And that's when you'll be writing your topic on those different chapters. Does this make sense so far? Are you guys learning something so far? Great. Now, now one thing I will also suggest that you do is that you go ahead and put page numbers on your first draft. Go ahead, in the footer, go ahead and put page numbers, starting with page 1 being the title page. The reason that I would suggest that you do this is that when you put in the page numbers, when you're done with your first draft, my suggestion is to print that first draft. Okay. The reason being, you want the page numbers on there. Let's say you print your first draft and it's 75 pages long. What happens if a sudden gust of wind blows those papers apart? Would you be able to put them back together quickly? I would say most likely not. So the page number is just to help you when you're starting working with your first printed version. Okay, so now you got your first draft. Again, it is not perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. If it was perfect, then you're probably not really doing it right. So go ahead and get that first draft and print it. Here's my very first draft of my second book. You can see that it has page numbers on there. The last page was page 64. And then what I did was I went and got a red pen and started editing. So I thought, okay, this is what I want to go here. So I want to go there. I need a lot more pages than 64. And there's even pages where I was referencing other stuff. And then I even wrote on I was writing in margins and stuff like that, all that on there. And there were times I even referenced going to the back cover because I was adding in so much stuff. Okay, so this probably took another couple of weeks just to look through my first draft. Now you try to come up with your second draft. The second draft is the one that's going to be a little bit more polished. This is when you're putting all your changes that you want to make in there, and just and now you're working on that second draft. After you're done with that, let me make sure I want to print it, edit it. And then after you finish with your second draft, I would say probably again, print that one. This is my second draft. Instead of being 64 pages, it is now 111 pages. So I almost doubled the thickness of my book when I was working on my second draft and my third draft. So I went through this several times. I mean, I read this book so many times, it's crazy. Now, another thing that you may also want to think about are quotes, because people use quotes all the time. Now, out of the 5 of you here, who in here thought about writing quotes at the beginning of every chapter in your book? Just say me if it's you. Okay. The thing is, quotes can be very, very beneficial. Out of my 4 books, my second one has quotes in it. I don't think my third one does. Actually, my third one, or excuse me, my fourth one does as well. My first and third do not. Now, I love to using quotes, and to make sure if you are going to use quotes that you cite the person's stating the quote. If you're doing a movie song, or excuse me, if you're doing a song, make sure that you quote who the band was, and if possible, who published that. So these are things that will help make it go stronger. Now, one thing that I ended up doing in my second book here is I decided to have quotes at the beginning of every chapter, and then there's also intermixed throughout the other parts of the chapter. Now, if you've ever read a book on personal development or personal growth, you will usually see some kind of feel-good quote at the beginning of every chapter. That's how most motivational self-help books are written. Not that it has to be, but that's the way most of them are written. However, I feel that we learned from our three main senses, which is going to be from touching something, hearing something, and seeing something. Now, most of the time, if you read a Gandhi quote or John F. Kennedy quote, it's usually going to be something where it's going to be a very good feeling. You're not going to hear his voice. You're not going to see him in your mind when you're reading that book. And when I thought about that, I decided I wanted to write every single quote that's in this book were all stated by people that did not exist. Every single quote. Because I wanted to hit the visual, I wanted to hit the auditory, and I wanted to hit the kinesthetic. Now, anybody want to venture a guess as to why or how did I do that? Or where those quotes came from? I'll read you the quote at my introduction in this book, and I want to see what you guys can guess. The quote is, "This is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, I show you how deep this rabbit hole goes." Does anybody know where that quote came from? You're muted.
The Matrix.
That was Morpheus from the Matrix. So you'll see in the thing, it was Morpheus, the Matrix, 1999. So every single quote in this book were all movie quotes. They're all said by people that did not exist. But the thing is, Katie, since you guessed what it was, when I read that quote, did you hear like Lawrence Fishburne's the scene in the movie? So that's how every single quote in here was done. It was different dramatic scenes in the movie. Now I'll read you the last quote that's on chapter 22. And let's see if this is called chapter 22, Bringing It All Together. And the quote is, "I love it when a plan comes together." Said by Colonel Hannibal Smith in the year 2006. So to me, I love that quote for that chapter because we're tying everything together. So that's what that quote was all about. So think about that when you're doing it. Now, I did meet another author a few years ago, and he wrote a book about Walt Disney. And he had quotes at the very beginning of every chapter. In his case, he wrote all Disney quotes. Every single quote was from Walt Disney. So that fit the theme of his book. So just something to think about. Okay, so we can go ahead and okay, so next thing we already talked about step 6, which is that you're going to actually print the book. So I'm going to write that down. Step 7, I'm going to share my screen so y'all can take the notes. Step 7. You want to think about the pre-content and post-content. Okay, when I'm talking about pre-content and post-content, I'm talking about all the stuff that's going to be in your book before you get to the first word in chapter 1. And this is everything that's going to be potentially in your book after the last little period in the last chapter of your book. Because there's a whole bunch more of the stuff that you need to go through. So I'm going to give you a list. I suggest that you start thinking about this. The first thing that you may want to look at is whenever you write a book. So Katie, if you're writing a book and you want to be a public speaker, let me ask you this. Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm left-handed.
Thomas, are you left-handed or right-handed? So I want to go with the right-handed exam before left-handed. You're right? Okay, so whenever you actually, let's say Katie or Stephanie or whomever else, if somebody buys your book and you go into, and being a right-handed person, if you wanted to autograph the book, you're going to be writing on the first page here. They're not going to be writing this way because it's too difficult for the right-handed person to try to battle battle that thing, or this thing will come up and it's whatever. Being left-handed, you can do it because you can just hold it and do it. So for a right-handed person, having what you need to think about is, what is that first page going to look like? Is it going to be like my lease options made easy? It's just basically a reprint of the title without my name down there. It's just the written content on there. Now I can autograph this page fairly easy. I can autograph it down here in the bottom. Or you may think about, maybe are you going to have the winner's code, a blank front page. And then the second page in is going to be, in this case, it's testimonials, but now I can call this is my autograph page. So you might want to think about that whenever you're putting the book together is, hey, my first page is going to be blank, or it's going to be a title page, or it's going to be something different. Other things that you could do, and this is what I did in my second book, is I started off with testimonials. I didn't even think about the white page until my third book. I was like, how am I going to sign this thing? It's just going to be a difficult. So if you're thinking about that, you're going to be somebody that's going to want your autograph in your book, think about that when you're putting your book together. The next page is going to be, most likely, it's going to be your title page. Now, the title page usually is going to mimic the front page. And we already saw about that. So this is the title page. Now, most books all begin on the right-hand side. They begin on the odd number page, which I'll agree with that. I can only go off the only two people have their cameras on, so I can. So when you're doing that, so most everything always begins on the right, on the odd number page on the right side. Now, after your title page, there's only one page that begins on the left side. It's only one page long. It's going to be this page. It's right behind the title page. You have the title page, and then right after that, you have this page. This is what is known as the copyright page. This is where you're going to be saying all rights reserved, designing on Destiny, and this is also where you're going to be giving your acknowledgments. Like in this particular case, I had the person took the photograph on the back cover, as well as my editor. I gave them the acknowledgement. So you want to have those named acknowledgements. Now, in a little bit, we're going to be talking about whenever you're doing cover design, that you may have to hire somebody else out. I've used people on Fiverr to do mine. And if I go right there, cover design, that's the name of the Sam, and then the interior formatting. Those are the two guys on Fiverr that helped me edit my book. So that's the stuff that's going to be going on your copyright page. To get a good format, go get 3 or 4 books that you like and mimic their copyright pages. Now, one of the things that you're going to be doing, especially and if you're going to be going self-published, is you're going to need to get that ISBN number. Now, whenever you self-publish through KDP, that ISBN number will be given to you automatically. So you don't have to go and buy one. Now, you can go out and buy them, but that is up to you if you want to buy that. Every book has to have one, though. As to the copyright page, and this, again, it could be, mine is at the very beginning, but the next thing after that, either before or after the title page, is going to be your testimonials. These are the people that read read your book or parts of your book that are going to be leaving you feedback. And I strongly suggest that everybody that's going to be a nonfiction author to have testimonials. Fiction is a little bit different, but and I'll tell you how to get testimonials here in a few moments. Now you may, okay, I'll just start my notes here. You may ask, has anybody ever just read a book before and you just picked up any book and there's testimonials on the back cover? How did they get those testimonials before the book was ever even written, or excuse me, published? Anybody want to venture a guess? I'm going to actually ask Stephanie and David on this one. How do you think they got testimonials on a book before it was ever even published? Because it's being published on the book or even in the book.
They send the book to someone beforehand.
Yep. And they reviewed it, yeah.
You know, if a friend of asked you to read their book and it's a 400-page book, how inclined are you to be able to read the entire book? Just for a 3-sentence testimonial. Some people may not. Now, this is a technique that my coach did not teach me. I came up on my own. Is that I actually let's say I got say Thomas, Stephanie, Katie, D, and David. That's 5 people here, and let's say I have 15 people. And what I would do is, this is what I did on 2 of my books, is I would give everybody chapter 1. Say, hey, Katie, here's chapter 1. I will give you also chapter 7 and chapter 19. And David, I'm gonna give you chapter 1, chapter 5, and chapter 12. And D, I'll give you chapter 1, chapter 3, and chapter 9. And you see the pattern that I'm going there. And normally what I did with the 15 people, I grouped them in 5 groups of 3. And each group got the same 3 chapters. Why do you think and then the second group would get the first chapter or the most relevant, the base chapter, and then and 2 additional chapters. Why do you think I alternated like that? I'll ask David again.
Just give different people a similar test.
No, I was trying to get different testimonials because I gave everybody the same 3 or 4 chapters. All your testimonials will be based on those 3 or 4 chapters. So if I wrote a story here about me going inside a 3-story what they call the Big Buddha in Kamakura, Tokyo, in Japan, and could I end up getting like 7 testimonials? Half the people talk about that, especially if it was a very relevant story. So that's the reason I gave people different chapters, is so I can get an authentic testimonial based upon the chapters that they read. Again, and I would even suggest that even to the fiction writers will be a little bit different because they wouldn't be able to follow the story, but at least in the first bit of it, just so they can start getting a taste into your writing style. Now you can use those testimonials everywhere. One of the things I suggest doing is putting a couple of testimonials on the back of your book. Now, I had 2 testimonials in this book on the back cover. And I had this one here from Daphne, which is a PhD. And then the one below that was a Jen. Now, Jen is actually, she lives in Sydney, Australia. So I wanted an international quote on there. And of all the quotes, Daphne is the one with the most credentials. I put those on the back cover deliberately. So out of all the testimonials that I had I have like 5 pages of testimonials, but I ended up going with those 2. So that again is just a suggestion. Now the next thing is a couple of chapters. Okay. The next pre-content stuff that you can also think about is having a forward. Now, please do not spell forward F-O-R-W-A-R-D. Please don't do that if you're going to use one, because it's actually spelled F-O-R-E-W-O-R-D, and it stands for before word or before your words. Now, forward is when somebody else is giving you kind of like a strong recommendation. Now, what I have learned is that if you decide to go and have a forward, make sure that the person writing the forward is somebody that is credible and known in that industry that you're writing about. Okay, don't have your mom do it. Don't have your sister do it. I mean, somebody, unless your sister is an expert in that field, then that actually, in my opinion, lowers the quality of the book before they even got to the content. But if you're writing a book on real estate investing and you got Robert Kiyosaki to endorse you or to write a forward for you, do you see how that could be something extremely powerful? I mean, you will sell the book just because of the forward in cases like that. So make sure if you decide to go with one, I don't have any forwards in mind. I thought about using my best friend on my second book until I realized having her write it is going to be completely irrelevant. Okay, so then the next item that comes before your content is what is known as the dedication. Okay, I do have dedications in my books as well. In my second book, there it is right there. And this who you dedicating this book to? Like this is, let's say with Thomas, he's talking about the mental health, mental illness. He may say, let's say somebody that has an addiction. This book is dedicated to all the people that have recovered or are recovering from blah blah, whatever the book is about. So definitely have definitely consider having a dedication. And as you can see, my dedication is very, very short. It's half a page, and it's centered vertically as well. I always put, if I'm going to do a dedication, I always include a scanned image of my signature. I just got a 3x5 card, sign it, scan it in, with a nice pen, with a thick pen, and that became my signature. That's an image that was put into my book. The next section you may have one is what is known as your acknowledgments. These are going to be who are the people that you want to acknowledge that helped you to get where you are today, or at least it can get you becoming where you are today in that subject matter. So I want to acknowledge my mom. I want to acknowledge my dad, my husband, my wife. You may want to acknowledge those people as well. After the acknowledgments, then this is, you will notice that all the pages before like the dedication, the title, they do not have page numbers on them. So these are unnumbered pages. Even your table of contents does not have a page number on it. My book starts on page 1. And I haven't even gotten to it yet. I'm already 7 pages in the book. Okay. So the next section is going to be your table of contents. Now, in the table of contents, you can do it like one of a few different ways. In my second book, as I'm showing you right there, I have chapters and subchapters. The big bolded ones are the chapters. The ones that are not voted or like a heading 2 are going to be my subchapters. So somebody's reading the books. I want to reread that thing about, let's say, about Junko right here. I know for them to go to page 30. So that's your table of contents. Now, because I'm just showing you different examples. My first book, table of contents, was completely different. My third book was different from that. So the thing is, just definitely to look at my third book. I had sections and chapters. As you can see, you can do your table of contents any way that you want. After the table of contents, then you're going to have what's known as the introduction. This is you basically just introducing the book. It is basically just saying, hey, this is what the book is for, and yeah, just this is just what the book is for. I just want to keep showing you the examples because they do exist in real time. So my introduction is actually is just getting started. You can see that's actually on page 5. The other thing that you may want to consider is having what's known as a preface or preface. A preface is basically just like, okay, this is where we're going to be going up in this book. So I wrote down the definition of a preface by saying the preface is an introduction written by the author that provides insights into the book's creation. It may include the reason behind writing the book, the author's motivation, and any relevant content. The preface helps us set the tone for the reader and provides a glimpse into the author's perspective. So that's basically just getting people ready to read your book. Any questions so far? We just covered the pre-content. The next section of your book is going to be the meat of your book. It's going to be all your content, all your chapters, and all of that. After you're done with that, then there's additional optional things that you can have in your book. One thing I like to have is what is known as a prologue or a final word or final note. Okay. So in my last book, my final note, it looks something like this. So basically, this is just a prologue, prologue as to what based on what we just covered in this book. So if you read your preface and you had a prologue, they should be similar to each other when explaining what you're going to be covering, and the last one is going to be what you actually just covered. Does this make sense? Okay. After a final word, then it's going to be what's called the recommendations. Now, if you reference other books, then this is where those recommendations are going to be. Again, this is my second book. These are the recommended readings. I'll hold it close. And that's the format. You write the author's last name, comma, first name, the title of the book in italics, who the publishing company was, and when was it published, and they're in alphabetical order. Okay, maybe some of y'all remember back in college or high school when you had to write recommendations from some of your previous work. Now, for me, I like to be unique. I like to do things differently, because I also had, because this book had a lot of movie quotes in it. I even had a recommend, instead of recommended reading, I also had a recommended movies that I referenced in the book. So that is something else that you can have. After that, you can have another section that's going to be called the about the author. This is where you gloat about yourself. And remember, when you do anything like writing about the author, you're always writing that in third person. You never say I this, I that. It's going to be he, she, this. Use their name. And the one thing I read or I was instructed is, if you're going to be, when you're writing the about the author, don't say he, or she all the time. Every third or fourth time that pronoun comes up, go back and put your first name. Okay, so Katie is a public speaker on this topic. She does this, she talks about this, she talks about this, then Katie does, then Katie again and again. Does this make sense? Okay, because if it's all about first names and pronouns, then it's not going to read well. The next section is a section that's highly, highly optional. Most books do not have it. I think I have a book here that has one. Yeah. This book here. Then next, you may have what's called an index. Now, these are hard to put together because you got to go back and find every time that word or that phrase was used in the book. So this is going to take some time. I never wanted to put an index in mine, but that is something that you could have. After the index, another thing that you may have is most fiction books won't have this, and most nonfiction books won't have this either. But it's something that you can also think about, and it's called an appendix. So if you're let's say you have your book, and your book is referring to different exercises or something like that, and like or a worksheet or something like that, those may be in your appendix. And make sure if you do appendix and you're referencing them, that you're referencing them on the right page number. Because this 8.5 by 11, it's not going to be the same page numbers as when you're doing a 6 by 9 book. And then the last thing that you may want to have in your book is more stuff about you or what else is you're selling. So again, going to my second book. Here's, hey, book Kevin Dunlap to speak at your next event. So this is where you can put some of your programs and other stuff into your book as well. So if somebody's buying your stuff, has anybody in here, and Katie's the only with a camera on, has ever read a book that the author is well known, and maybe he or she references buying his or her other stuff? Like, say, for an example, Dr. Wayne Dyer. I mean, I've not looked, but there we go. Here's other stuff. So this is another place that you could actually be selling your stuff. That covers all the pre-content and the post-content. So you got your content. It took you a while to write that, but now it's going to take you a little bit longer to write all that pre-stuff and all the post stuff. Any questions so far? You can put a yes or no. For those that don't have their cameras on, a yes or no in the chat. If you have any other questions. Nope. D, nope. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to go to step 8. And we've got a few more steps to go. The rest of the steps are going to be a little bit more easy to cover. So step 8, let me make sure I share my screen so you guys can see what I'm writing. So step 8 is you want to decide, do you want to be soft cover or hardcover? Now, for people that are writing fiction, a lot of times that's going to be most often it's going to be soft cover. While people like myself and maybe Katie, we can go either route, or we can even go both routes. Now, with a soft cover book, with a hard cover book, they're more expensive to print. And how you do the covers are completely different, or not completely different, or a lot different than how they do on a soft cover book. On a soft cover book, they're easy. I mean, she can throw this in her purse, and she can just carry it around with her. But there's something that soft cover books do that hardcover books won't do. It's called curling. Does anybody know what curling is? That's curling. When the cover starts to bend. And sometimes humidity, heat will cause this to happen if there's much moisture in the air, or maybe depending on the quality of the print. So this will occur quite frequently on soft cover books. You're not going to see curling on a hardcover book. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, for those of you that are just starting out, I would probably suggest you go soft cover first, and then you will have to work on the book to have it converted to hardcover. The only thing that's going to be different is going to be not the thickness of the book, but it's going to be how you design the cover page. So on a soft cover book, you've got the front cover, you've got the spine, and you've got the back cover. On a hardcover book that has this thing on the outside is known as a dust jacket. You've got a front cover, you got a spine, and you got a back cover. However, you've got an inside flap and you've got an outside flap. On a soft cover book, all of this has to go on the back cover. On a soft cover, all that goes on the back cover. While on a hard cover, you've got two additional surfaces. So if you're thinking of going, if you want to save yourself some time, I would strongly suggest going soft cover first before going hard cover. And let me see. Now we're just going to go into step 9. Okay, so step 9 is going to be images. What images are you going to have inside of your book? Okay, if you decide that you do want to have images, and your book is going to be just a regular printed book, I would suggest avoiding color images at all costs. Because if you've got one color image in your book, then your book has to be printed by a color image printer, which is going to be like 3 times the expense of just a black and white printer. So avoid color images in your book. However, I will show you some of the stuff that I've got through. Here's my second book. There's an image in the book right there. You see that it is on grayscale. And I've got a few images. In my book. Now here's another one. So if you decide to go with images, this is what I strongly suggest. I will share my screen and show you exactly what I did. This is my second book right here. And what I would suggest that you do is whenever you want to do images, first, when you have the graphic designer design your image, have them do it in color. Okay. And then once they're done with it, either you or you have them also convert it to a grayscale. The grayscale is the one that's going to be going in your book. Now, I'm going to ask Stephanie here. Why would I go the extra mile to use a color image for when I'm writing my book that I'm not even going to be using in the book? Why would I do that? If Stephanie doesn't answer, then I will go with D or David. Or even Katie. The people without the cameras, I don't know if they're at their computers or not.
You want the color in the initial design, is
No.
what you're saying. The grayscale, what?
The grayscale we use in the whenever you're going to have your book printed. But why would you do? Why would you have somebody do a color image that you're not even going to use in the book?
because you could use it like for maybe if you're doing a presentation, or maybe also if you have the initial color, it gives you the option, of someone to eventually print it out that way, even if it's more expensive.
I would say that you're not going to use the color image inside the book at any time. However, if that image is something that you can use for your marketing on your website, on your flyers, on a whole bunch of other stuff, then it's great to have that color image. So why not? If you go the black and white route, like it is like that wheel is right there, then that's not going to look good in a color flyer. That's going to look good in a color flyer. So always get your images done in color and then convert them to grayscale, because you can use that later on. Okay. Let me. Okay, so we're going to go on to step 10. Step 10 is going to be a content editor. Now, I'm going to strongly suggest at some point in time that you do hire a content editor, especially on your first book. Now, if you can't afford a content editor because they're typically a few $1,000s, I would then go to have somebody else that you trust and love to read your book cover to cover. Maybe he or she can even give you a testimonial. As you saw in this book, I had that guy Tyler Tischler was my editor. He was up in Michigan when I wrote this book in 2016. In 2019, when I wrote The Winner's Code, a very dear friend of mine in Las Vegas, she's the one that read this book. And one of the things that when she read the book, she gave me some great feedback. One of the things I do, and this is something that I do in my normal writing style, and I've become a lot more conscious of it since she read that book. She goes, Kevin, he says, you started more than 30 paragraphs with the word and. And like, really? Because I was making a point in one paragraph, and then I wanted to continue that point, and I wanted it to be a different paragraph, so I would say and, comma, and I'll continue on. So after she pointed that out, I took out, as soon as it was 30, I took out like 28 of them. I deliberately left 2 in. One was a quote, so I had to. And then the second was just to make a reference, just to make a point. But always have somebody else read your paper, read your book. Now, I'm assuming most everybody in here went to college, or at least high school. And if let's say you're in college and you're in English 101 and you're writing a paper, did you have a friend read it? And you probably read theirs, just to get the other perspectives a look on it. Like when Tyler was reading this book, and I was talking about the big Buddha in Japan, that you can walk inside of it, and he goes, "Did you mean that you could walk inside?" Because he caught it, but he thought it was an error. For me, it's like, I'm glad you caught that. I'm glad you caught that, but no, that's no error. You can actually go inside it. It says 3 stories tall. So always have somebody else read your stuff for you. Outside of that, we already talked about chapter or step number 11 is going to be forward or no forward. Okay, so this is where you have to decide, do you want to have that forward or not? And I would most likely say, if you're deciding, should I use it, should not use it, I would probably lean on the side of not using it. Okay, because you want to make sure that person is a very credible person in your space. Then that will take us to step number 12. I'm going to share my screen again. Step 12 is testimonials. Even though we already talked about testimonials and having some other people read a couple of 2 or 3 or 4 of your chapters, go in and get those testimonials. And then out of the ones that get back to you, then if you want to put 1 or 2 on the back of the book, start picking out the ones that you're going to be using. Now, one of the things I always ask when I'm asking for a testimonial, it says, like, say, hey, Katie, thank you for doing this. How do you want your name to appear in the back of the book or in the testimonial? Do you want to be Katie Watcher, as Katie Watcher, maybe CEO watcher industries, or do you want to be a K dot watcher, or do you want to be a KDW, or how do you want your name to appear? And I try to respect how they want it to appear. Because some people don't want their last names to be known. They don't want to be out there. So always, have the courtesy of asking them how do they want to appear. And this on any testimony. If somebody's leaving you a testimony on your Google business profile, or somebody's going to leave it for you, always ask them how they want their names to appear. Okay. Step 13 is formatting. Now, with formatting, I would strongly suggest that you don't do the formatting yourself. Have somebody that's professional do it for you. I've always used this website for all of my formatting, called Fiverr.com. And there's two kinds of formatting that you want to do. There's two kinds of formatting. One is going to be for print. The second one is going to be for Kindle. Okay. The reason being is that whenever you decide that you're going to be doing your formatting, the next thing you have to decide, what size book do I want? If it's going to be your standard nonfiction book, that is usually 6x9. Other books could be a little smaller. This could be like a 5x8. So, so whenever the formatter is going to be doing this, they need to know what that conversion ratio is. The Kindle version is going to be different than the print version. In all honesty, you will have fewer pages on your Kindle version than you will on your print version. You will always have fewer pages.
Do
you know why, David? Sure.
No, I don't know why.
The reason why is in most chapters, when most books begin on the right page, right? It begins on the right side, on the odd number page. On the left side is the end of the last chapter. Well, in Kindle, this chapter ended on the right side. So on the next page is white. And then this chapter begins again. That page will not appear on Kindle.
Yep.
So anytime if you're doing the standard formatting, all these pages will disappear. That's why your page numbering on Kindle and this is going to be different. So if you're referencing to say, hey, refer to the appendix on page whatever, that page number is going to be different now on the Kindle version. So make sure that that you have that done. Now, whenever you're getting the Kindle version done, normally the chapters at the very beginning are going to be clickable. So the person that's doing your Kindle formatting, they'll be the ones that like. If you're going to chapter 5, because that's where you left off on Kindle, that's how you're going to find it really quick. Now, David, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. So Amazon, aside from Kindle, they also print out hardcover and softcover as well if someone places an order, or that's a different program.
Amazon, they will print your softcover and hardcover book, and I'm going to show you that here in just a moment.
Okay. And also, will you say how much they take of a cut?
Well, it depends on what. It's going to depend on the price that you're going to be setting, and just because you set the price doesn't mean that's going to be the price. I mean, I've got 4 books out there, and I put my 4th book at $24.95, and within 2 days, it was being offered for like $19.95 as a brand new copy. So you set your price, you may not always get that, and then yes, they will take a portion of it for shipping and printing purposes. And just so that you know, if you're putting it on Kindle, then you'd be doing something what is known as a print on demand. So if Katie right there were to order this book right now, the Kindle will actually print that book and then send it to her. This is not sitting on some shelf somewhere. So print on demand came out probably a good 15, 20 years ago. And I'm sure some of the other book publishing companies do the same thing. Now, the next section or next step is going to be step 14. It's going to be called the cover design. The cover design, you may have the front cover already kind of picked up and say, okay, this is my front cover, but I have not designed this part yet. The reason being that you haven't designed this yet because you don't know how thick this is going to be. If this book ended up losing 20 pages, do you think the spine and everything else that would shrink? So you have to know the exact number of pages, including that white page in your book before you finalize your cover design. Now, when you're doing a cover design, number one, you have to use images that you have the rights to. Like this image here, I bought an image like this on Shutterstock. And that became, and what I ended up doing with this image, you see that there's an arm right there, has a shadow, and it's drawing a house. That house was fully drawn when I got this, and when I bought the design. And what I asked my cover designer to do is like, hey, I want to keep the hand drawing the house, but I want you to erase all parts of the house that are not in the shadow of the hand. Because what she said was, if somebody were to look at this from across the room and they saw that design and the whole house was there, they'd probably think it's a book on architecture, designing your own house. So that's, so you want to make sure that whenever you have a cover design, that it can be recognizable from a distance, and it has to have some kind of meaning to you. Now, if you're a first-time author, I would suggest not having your image on the front cover. Now, Wayne Dyer is different. However, if you're a first-time author, I would probably suggest not doing that. Then let's go ahead and quickly finish everything else out. Step 15 is going to be deciding if you want to go published or self-published. And we talked about that, do your own research as far as that is concerned. We'll go through a self-published thing here really quick because I know we just lost one person. Step 16 will be to pick a launch date. Now, what day are you going to actually be launching your book? Step 17 would be, at that time, you want to get what is known as a proof. A proof is a printed copy of your book that you could take a physical hard look at. This, as I said at the very beginning of the show, this was my very first book. At least Opportunities was my very first book. This is the very first printing of this book. This is actually even the proof. Back then, they would write the word proof on the back cover. When I got this book here, this is the first edition. When I got this book here, I misspelled a word on the back cover. I had one too many V's in the word today. As you can see, we've got the spine is fine, the front cover is fine, the back cover is fine. I was looking at the bleed, making sure that the green does not go onto the back cover. So these are the things that you're going to be taking a look at. After I had that book, I ordered a second copy or another proof with the word today actually spelled correctly, and then I realized, hey, there's no spine. My book was too thin to have a spine. The first 20 or so copies of my book that I have don't have a printed spine. So you always want to make sure that you get a proof and you look over that completely. Make sure that every page is where it needs to be. All the design that everything looks perfect. If not, don't approve the proof. Now, when you're ordering a proof in these days, this is what it's going to look out. This is the proof for my fourth book. You will see across the cover it says "not for resale." It says it on all three sides. So these proofs are not supposed to be sold. They're just for you to take a look at. Even though I've heard of a lot of people actually selling proofs. Step number 18 is a pretty easy one. Is then you want to go ahead and approve the book. That would, which is just a one simple step on KDP if that's the route that you're going. Step 9 is plan a book launch. And then step 20 is well, that's everything is on print on demand. So you want to make sure that whenever you have as your launch date, that it's going to be something that's going to be a time in the future that gives you time to approve that proof. Now, it may take you a few days to get the proof, so you may want to make it a week or even 2 weeks out. Now, one of the things I would strongly suggest is always picking a date in the future, and then try to maybe start having what's known as a pre-sales. Try to have pre-sales of your book, so that whenever it does launch and those books are now being printed and being paid for, that you may also try to go after the very coveted best-selling author in your category. Does this make sense to everybody? Now, I know we're past the time that we're supposed to end. I'm going to actually put something in the chat for you guys so that you have it in case you have to go. For those that want to stay a little bit longer, and we'll go through KDP and how to use that. I'm going to show you that right now. So first off, I'm going to say thank you for everybody for being here in case you have to go early. Now, for those of you that have stayed to the end, here is a link for what is known as my discovery session. Oops, optimalperformanceacademy.org. As well as for those of you, if you would like to be able to leave a review, I would highly appreciate that. So those two are in the chat. The Discover one, I don't know why it didn't work, but it's this. I want to make sure that you do have something that you can click on. Okay, so the first clickable link is to leave a review, or hopefully a 5-star review on Google My Business. The second one is to schedule a 45-minute call so we can talk more about how we could possibly work together. But right now, I'm going to go and show you how to use KDP. So KDP stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. I'm going to also go ahead and put this in the chat, this file in the chat. Okay, where did it go? There it is. There we go. Okay, so the notes are in the chat. And this is how you do the whole KDP thing. First off, you just go to kdp.com, and you can just go to kdp.com, and then it's going to redirect you to the sign-in page. It's free to create an account, so go ahead and do that. You can do that now. You can get a head start and do that now, or go ahead and just sign in. I'm going to sign in right now. And you're going to be coming to your manage page or your dashboard, essentially. And you can see there's launched my 5th book, my first book, my second book, or excuse me, my third and my second. You will see that this is the Kindle version and paperback. Kindle is $7.95. The paperback is $24.95. For the winner's code, $7.95 and $19.95 for the Kindle and paperback. As you can see, I could go also hardcover route. If I wanted to go a hardcover route, I would have to get a new cover done because these books here do not have the inside and outside flaps, and they will be thicker because of the fact that it's hardcover. And here we go. So this is to answer David's question. If I wanted to order some copies of my book here, these are the not the prices that's going to be on the Amazon site, but this is basically just the cost of ordering that book. So let's say I want to order some author copies. The reason you may want an author copy is that maybe you're doing a book launch, and maybe you're going to be at a bookstore, or you're going to have an event or something like that. You can order up to 999 copies at any one time. You can also order just as few as one. I have a tendency to, when I do these, I usually order in sets of 10 or 20, just so I can have a few on hand for whenever I do give a live event. So let's say this is the cost of one. Please select the marketplace. This is going to be on Amazon.com, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to cart. And as you can see right now, it's going to cost $4.24, and I don't believe that includes shipping. But that's how much it's going to cost. If I were to order 10 of these, that would be $42.40. So that is going to be the cost of that. If I was to go ahead and go to my shopping cart and sign out, I can go and order those copies, and then it says here within 2 weeks, it will usually ship. Most likely, you'll get it within 1 week. Does that answer your question, David?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. So with KDP, essentially, whenever you're working with them, is that whenever you are starting to put your account together or for your book, I mean, again, you could be doing this now without having to worry about having your book done yet. Let me see here. I want to edit. Edit the book. Edit the print book details. So when you first get started, you're going to be on this page here, which could say a paperback of details. And what you're going to be doing is, what language, what's the name of the book, and once you name it, you can't unname it or rename it. What is going to be the subtitle, and that's optional. And then, is this going to be part of a series? Now, for you fiction writers, and if you're going to be writing a series, this might be something that you want to consider as well. Even if the series are maybe not related to each other, or even if they are. This is the edition number. So this is the first edition. Who's the author? Kevin A Dunlap, right there. I use my middle initial. And then any other contributors that I want to apply. So I can say author, narrator, illustrator, editor. All these other people can also be a part of your contributors. And then you go and write your description. Now, usually my description is also the same description as on the back cover. It doesn't have to be, but this is where you would write it. Well, now with AI like ChatGPT, you can probably get some pretty good descriptions for you right there. I own the copyright. Primary audience, is it sexually explicit images or title? No. And then who's the youngest viewers? Oh, have not chosen an age range. Primary marketplace is going to be Amazon.com. Looks like I've got a warning. So with the paperback copy, you can. I know there's other companies, David, but I do not know of one right now. But I would say do a Google search for print on demand. That's probably one of the best ways to do it. And then with Amazon, you can pick one category for a soft cover book. You can pick two categories with an ebook. I would strongly suggest, if you're trying to get found, is that you do not put them in the same category. Have three different categories, and these are some of your keywords. And then publication date was 10/23/2016. That's when that book went live. Go and save and continue. Okay, here's page 2, 2 of 3, because we're now in the paperback content. So as you can see, all the stuff before, we've not done anything as far as the book is concerned. That is your ISBN number. And then after that, it's going to be a black and white interior with white paper. You can choose the different paper style that you want. You can select your sizes. Again, all my books are 16 by 9, but you can select another size. And I will say that if your book is less than 100 pages in size, is that most likely you're not going to get the print on the spine. The ISBN number is automatically created when you create the book, so you'll get that automatically, and you'll get a different ISBN number for your ebook. Now this is going to be for your trim. This is basically the outside part of the book. There's going to be no bleed. That essentially just means that whatever's going on on the back cover can carry over to the spine. If it's distinct that you don't want it to be, then you'll have the bleed. Or excuse me, got that backwards. Now this is where I upload the manuscript. This is where I upload the image. And the image is going to be in this format. Going from left to right is going to be back cover, spine, front cover. That's how the image is going to appear. Going down, AI generated content, I'm going to say no. Summary. This is my printing cost, so that was not 424 was not including the shipping cost. So hit save and continue. That's the translations to what these are going to be selling for in these other countries. Now we're on the third of three tabs. Now, what areas do I want my book available in? I don't know why Australia is not marked, so I'm going to go and mark it there. The main reason I'm picking Australia because on this book, which is my second book, the lady on my back cover, Jen, she lives in Australia, so I definitely want her to have access to the book. You could do all. You could definitely do all. And I don't believe you can choose all. You have to choose all the other 218 manually. And then this is where you set your price. $24.95. Min is 1060. Maximum is $250. And these are the auto corrections for these other countries. And then that's going to be the printing costs for those countries. By clicking publish, okay, publish your paperback book. And usually when you make a change, it may take up to 72 hours before it goes into effect, just so that you're aware. Because this will take me back to my dashboard. Okay. Yes. Well, I would say it depends on which platform that you're using. If you're using the AI, and I'll actually okay. So it's up there live now. Now I do know there is a platform that you can use. It's called playgroundai.com. And with here, you can have a limited number of images that you can create. So if you want to use this or some other site, make sure that the images that you create are your own, for your own copyright. Because you cannot just go to Google and download somebody else's image to be part of your book. You have to have the rights to it. Either buy the rights to it, create it with AI, I would assume, or create it yourself. That part I do not know because my book is right now is only written in English. I don't know if Amazon would convert it to Chinese or Russian or whatever other language that it could be. That I do not know. That is a very good question. Now, this is all that I had for this training. I know I went about 15 minutes long. Does anybody, is it only one that, is it Dolly? I do know that Dolly is a paid site. I just found this one a few months ago or a couple of months ago when I was doing an AI talk. And I ended up really liking this one. And I've created a few images here. Dolly, just make sure that you do have that you do have copyright images
No, but you
on
do
that.
own the copyright. If you make an image in AI, you own the copyright. I thought if a AI makes the image, then you don't own, you can use it. You have the right to use it, but anyone can use it since you didn't create it. That's what I thought.
If you created it using the prompts that you use, then I believe you would own the rights to that. Now, Thomas asked about audiobook. I'm glad you asked. I believe it's called ADX. I might be wrong. Now, those three letters, and I think those are the three letters. Okay, maybe it's not. ADX. Let's use com without a zero. Do the ADX, well, obviously it was not ADX, let's try ACX.com. Okay, there it is. I believe this is it here. As ACX is where you upload your audiobooks. Now, if you're going to be doing an audiobook, this is the Amazon version of Audible. So this is where you would upload your audiobooks by chapter. So each file is going to be chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So they're all going to have to be separate. Now you can sit down with a good microphone in a room that's not going to echo and record your book for yourself if you want to be the person that's going to be narrating your own book. And I would highly recommend that. Because this one was, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm listening to an audiobook, and I do listen to a lot of them, I prefer the books that are read by the author. That's just me. I know there's other people that before you go, D, I'm going to show you one last thing. What is it? 11labs.io. Now, for those of you that want to use AI to create your audio files, I would suggest that you can think about 11 Labs. Now, 11 Labs is very, very inexpensive, and once this AI has a range of your voice, it will read your entire book into an audio file by chapter. So this is for you, Thomas. If you want to do that, 11labs.io. Let me see what the pricing is. Oops. And you can start off with free, or you can sign up for the starter kit for $1 a month. Once you create your ACX account, then I'm not sure if it will be connected with KDP. It's probably going to stand on its own because it is a different platform. Yeah. I figured spending an extra 1 or 2 minutes, it could be very well worth it. So that is all that I have for this. If anybody has any additional questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I would also suggest if you want to have a discovery session so we could talk about you and your business or your book, go ahead and go to that discovery link that's in the chat. Or for those of you that like the content, please leave me a 5-star review. I really appreciate those kinds of things. Thank you. And if nobody has any questions, I'll stay on until after everybody signs off, just in case somebody wants to ask a private question.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Have
Of
a
course.
great day and a great week.